Welcome to Chapter by Chapter. I am your host, Brian Thomas Kropp, and I believe that stories have a tremendous power for good, and so I write them, and I enjoy sharing them with you. And if you are new to the show, the way that the format tends to roll is in just a moment you'll hear a chapter from a story that I have written, and then on the other side of that chapter, we'll go into some behind-the-scenes material on that chapter, whether it's stories from my past or stories on how the chapter was written or how to write books in general or those kinds of things. That's what that portion is there at the end. I'm glad that you are here with us. We have been in part 2 of a series of novels called the Pearl Saga. Part 2 is called Shell Game, and it's a detective noir kind of thing, mystery, where we've got our detective, Evan Gold, who's trying to figure out who killed his partner, whose name was Gabe Silver, who killed Gabe and possibly killed somebody else in town before the police conclude that it was him and send him off to jail. So he is really trying to work all of the angles to make that happen. And where we are specifically is he's got a client named Claire Porter, and he's been trying to get a meeting between her and this other weird guy named Harold Huber to kind of see if there's any connection between the two of them, and that would kind of tie some of the loose ends up. But then there was this knock at the door at the end of the last chapter, and we've got to figure out who's on the other side of the door. It's like 2, 3 in the morning, something like that. So who on earth is knocking at the door? So that's where this chapter begins, and we will get into chapter 21 of Shell Game right after we hear from this week's sponsors. Chapter 21. The air in the apartment stood still. The only sounds were Evan, Claire, and Harold's breathing, along with the anxious cicadas chirping in the cottonwoods. For a moment it seemed time halted its progress. Each person stared at the door. Then Harold hissed under his breath to Evan, "You careless fool!" He took out a handkerchief and began to blot imaginary beads of sweat from his forehead. "Who could it be?" asked Claire, and covered her mouth with her hands. "Everybody calm down," Evan said to his guest before turning toward the door. Evan grabbed Evan's elbow. "Mr. Gold," he said, "I hope you don't think this could be a neighbor asking for some sugar or some other harmless visitation. Not at this hour. Don't answer the door." Evan shook his arm free. "This ain't my first rodeo, Mr. Huber. Believe me, whoever it is has seen the lights on and heard us talking. I agree it's not just anyone out there, and because of that, we aren't going to be able to get away with ignoring them. You both stay calm and let me get rid of them." "Do you think it's that woman from outside?" Claire asked, looking at the window as if the woman might climb in at any moment. "Or," Harold placed one hand over his right eye, "him." Claire began to pace. "Well," Evan said with a mischievous smile, "only one way to know. Remember, stay calm." He walked to the front door and asked, "Can I help you? It's kind of late." "Come on, Gold, open up," came a voice from the other side. Evan recognized it as Lieutenant Steve Abrams and said as loudly as possible, "Certainly, officer." He opened the door only as wide as his body and saw that Lieutenant Bobby Short tagged along. "Good evening," he said. "Let us in, Gold," Short said. "Sure," said Gold, "so long as this is a personal visit and not official in any way. And if it's official, only if you have a warrant." "Evan, you could stand to be more cooperative," said Abrams. "We've been hoofing it all day and could use the break." "I sympathize," said Evan, "but what would I tell Mrs. Cravens, my third-grade civics teacher? I can't let you in here without a warrant. She taught me that much. You got something to chat about? We can do it just as well out here." "Fine," said Short, leaning in. "You want to play hard to get? Fine. We heard a rumor going around that you and Silver weren't the closest of business partners." "Oh, yeah?" said Evan. "What's that supposed to mean?" You didn't always see eye to eye, said Short, with too much emphasis. Evan leaned his shoulder against the door jamb. You gotta do better than that if you're gonna interrupt a man's evening at this hour. This level of police work is beneath what I've come to expect from you two. I'm disappointed. Well, said Short, you can wipe that smug look off your face. We got a tip. You got a tip, did you? Evan asked. What kind of tip? One that says maybe you killed your partner out of spite. Evan rubbed his chin. Uh-huh. And was there a name to go with this tip? Short proudly shook his head. Anonymous. Evan laughed a humorless laugh and looked at his shoes before saying, You should definitely take that one seriously, gents. Give us some credit, Evan, Abrams said. We wouldn't be here if that was the only tip like that we got. Yeah? Like what? Evan asked. The widow, Mrs. Silver. She's been saying how you and Gabe had some rather long and loud disagreements. She's saying maybe you killed him out of jealousy. I see, said Evan. She's partly right. Gabe and I had disagreements, sure, find me two people who don't. But she probably didn't tell you that she was upset at the long hours and the constant fear that what did happen to her dearly departed could have happened 1,000 times before that. Your wives probably have the same fears. Now that everything's fallen on her, she's taking it out on me. Can't say I blame her. Short slowly shook his head. I don't know, Evan. Too many things are starting to add up. How you figure? Evan asked. Simple. You decide you've had enough of Gabe. Too many of these disagreements. You're too much of a lone wolf. You want to go out on your own. So you send Gabe out on a job. Only you lurk in the shadows and off him and throw him off the bridge. Evan laughed from his toes. For starters, you've seen Memorial Bridge. From where am I going to lurk? The only thing that place has going for it is that it's so remote. But if I, as you say, I wanted to go out on my own, why not just dissolve the partnership and save myself the prison time? And let's not forget, about this time yesterday, you said I killed Charles to avenge the murder of my partner. I'm afraid you can't have it both ways, fellas. Short put his face close enough that Evan could feel the heat of his words. All I know is that this whole thing has smelled like garbage from the moment go. As soon as you were attached to this crime, I just had a feeling about it. Keep this in mind, Gold. Wherever it is you slink around in the dirty little corners of this town, the light is coming for you. We will point the full light of justice on you one way or another. You can't hide what you've done forever. Back up, Bobby, Evan warned and shifted his eyes to Lieutenant Abrams. If you want to keep this a friendly visit, Steve, you'll back your attack dog up a little. Give him some room, Bobby, said Abrams. We don't have anything formal. Not yet, Short said before taking a step back. Evan rubbed his chin and said, Hey, I got an idea. Try this story on for size. I was upset at Gabe because he was a better detective than me. Everyone liked him, he was better looking, blah, blah, blah. I wanted him dead. So, as you say, I sent him on a goose chase to lure him into my dastardly trap. I kill him, do a ham-handed job disposing of the body, then I beat it over to where Charles is, a man I've never met before, and kill him just to cover up the real intention of my murder, even though every bit of it would point back to me as the obvious suspect. You'll want to write this part down because it'll give you a tip on my next move. Next, I'm working out a simple but clumsy scheme to off Silver's wife because she won't keep her trap shut. The detective stared at Evan. Short shoved his hands in his pockets, and Abrams tilted the brim of his hat back on his head. You gotta help us out, Evan, Abrams said. You didn't do it, then you gotta give us something. Do I? Evan asked. Don't be like that, Abrams said. We're all trying to get to the same place. We all want Gabe's killer behind bars. That's nice, Evan said. I like that. But let's cut out all this tomfoolery. What's the real reason you're here? What do you mean? Abrams said. This time of night, and all you want to do is float some theories by me? Evan straightened up. You could have had me down to the station in the morning and got yourself a decent night's sleep. You're here for something else. Now out with it. Short lunged at Evan. Evan noticed the vein on Short's forehead pulse and twitch under the stress of his words. "We're on to you, Gold," he said. "You're hiding something, or a part of something, or giving us a runaround, which is obstruction. And you will be found out. You think you're clever and that the normal rules of conduct in these cases don't apply to you because you don't wear a badge. You'll be found out and you'll be shut down." "Wait," Evan said, putting a hand between him and Short. "That was it? You're telling me that the only reason you're here is to intimidate me? You mean there's nothing else going on in all of Athens occupying your attention?" "Aw, shucks, fellas, I'm flattered." Evan studied the look of frustrated anger on Short's face, the resolution on Abram's weakness, and shook his head. "The DA has you by the neck, huh? How bad is it?" "You know how it is, Evan," Abram said. "The DA gets elected, and not more than 2 months later we've got 2 unsolved murders on the streets. There's already a buzz for him to resign. Our jobs are on the line. We got to wrap this thing up fast. You got anything that can help us, you should hand it over." "Let us in," Short said. "I know you have evidence in there." "No warrant, no access," Evan said. "I mentioned Mrs. Craven's, right? She was particularly specific on search and seizure. Not sure what that was all about, come to think of it. Maybe she had some secrets. Anyway, here's what you do. You hop over and wake up Judge Ham, which he's not going to enjoy, and get a warrant like you should have done already, and I'll be happy to let you in." The three of them stood there in the hallway in silence for a moment. "Anything else, gentlemen?" Evan asked. Abrams looked at Short and readjusted his hat. "Come on, Bobby," he said. "Let's see what those other leads might turn up." "We're coming for you, Gold," Short said. "Uh-huh. Full light of justice," Evan nodded, giving them a thumbs up. "You're going to mess something up. Everyone does. No one can account for every mistake. You'll be found out, and I'm going to be so happy to send you away." Evan started to step back and shut the door. He stopped and looked at the detectives. "Next time you're on your way over, give me a call. I can have some refreshments ready for you." "Good night, officers." Just then, from inside Evan's apartment, there was a high-pitched shriek, followed by the sound of a large glass vase smashing on the floor. The three men looked at each other. Bobby Short's face went from frustration to victory. "Looks like we just got a cause for entering your premises after all, Gold," he said. "So it does," Evan nodded. "Right this way." He smiled, opened the door, and led the detectives into the apartment. There are a couple of names in this chapter that I grabbed from my past world. And then there's a problem that this chapter kind of highlights that I needed to iron out in revisions. The names, one was Judge Ham with 2 M's. It's hard to hear that second M on a podcast, but it's Hamm. And much like the Gloria Hotel, which was a location earlier in the story, Gloria is the name of my mother-in-law, and there was a way to kind of the theme to this is going to be, I don't know how to name things, so let me find names that are already out there, and I will use those. So that got named after her. Ham is Gloria's maiden name. So the family that I go visit when I visit my wife's family in Florida, her mom's side are all named Ham, so that was a way to get their name in there. And then Mrs. Cravens was not my 3rd grade civics teacher. She was, however, my 1st grade all the subjects teacher. I don't know how school went in 1962, so I thought, well, maybe someone comes in special and does civics. I don't know. Civics wasn't even a course, I don't think, when I was taking 3rd grade. We did the Pledge of Allegiance, but that's about it. But Mrs. Cravens was my 1st grade teacher. And according to my mother, I drove her crazy. So just a couple of stories for just to let you know what kind of child I was like. And what's interesting is I see this same kind of thing in my own kids, and it makes me both crazy and it makes me laugh all at the same time. But one was she had said at the beginning of school, she goes through the roster of names and says, is so-and-so here? Like, she doesn't know anybody in the class. She's just going through to make sure everybody on the list that she got is actually in her class. But she starts this off by saying, if you go by another name, then just say that name. So I guess, you could say, is Robert Davis here? And you could say, call me Bobby. And that would be how that goes. Well, I don't know that there's a time limit on when to say what else you are called, and there is not a shortened version of Brian. So she says, Brian Kropp, and I say, I'm here. Well, at some point in the year, I decide that I don't want to be called Brian anymore, and I really, I don't really care for my middle name. It's just not a name that sounds good to me. So I thought in the middle of my first grade year, I want to go by Tim. Tim is my new name. So I start just turning in homework with Tim on it, like I'm writing T-I-M, I'm thinking handing it in. And then eventually, I think as she's grading papers, she starts to see a pattern of Brian has suddenly stopped turning in any homework at all. And I now have a new student named Tim. And so I think, I don't remember if I got in trouble for that or not, but there was a come to Jesus moment of you need to change your name back to Brian. Anyway, so there was that. And then I also fell off a piece of playground equipment during recess one day and broke my wrist. Which the interesting part of this, it's not so much that it involves Mrs. Cravens, other than it just happened while I was in her class. And I broke my right wrist, and for 6 weeks, because that's about the length of time that a arm tends to heal. I only remember this. Well, I don't remember it. I knew it took 6 weeks, and there was all kinds of adventures with the arm while I'm doing this. But my youngest daughter broke her arm too, and it at I don't know, what was she, 2-3 years old? It also took 6 weeks. So I think it's a standard thing is 6 weeks. Anyway, but the whole 6 weeks I'm left-handed. I have to write left-handed because I can't write with my right hand. And I distinctly remember a very grown-up moment in my first grade youth of the cast coming off and then having to decide, am I going to continue to be left-handed, which doesn't sound that magical, except my dad, my mom, and my older brother are all left-handed. We could have a completely left-handed family. I was the only right-handed person in the whole family. I could go down that road and be left-handed because I was getting pretty good at it. Or I could switch back to right-handed, which I would have to sort of relearn. Or if I was super clever, I could do both, and I could be right-handed and left-handed. And I had this thought when I was in just like, however old you are in first grade, it's like 6 years old. And I thought, I'll do both. So obviously, I went back to right-handed. That's how that went. I just didn't have the discipline to keep up both the right and the left-handed thing. But it is interesting, growing up with nothing but left-handed folks, I eat, it's weird. I think it's all the things that my parents taught me how to do, I do left-handed. So like I put on my belt left-handed, I eat left-handed, I brush my teeth left-handed, I do a lot of things left-handed. But then if a school teacher taught me how to do them, I do them right-handed. So that's a little interesting factoid but I type with both hands. That's how that goes. So I didn't write the story right-handed or left-handed. I kind of did both of them. But the problem that this chapter kind of revealed in the drafts was earlier the police come and question Gold and have a theory as to how he committed the crimes. And it does seem like at least Officer Short really wants to get Evan Gold in jail. So they had some theory as to how he killed Jason Charles, and now they've come back on this anonymous tip for how he actually killed his partner. But I think in the earlier drafts, they come back with the exact same story. So it was the same. They'd figured out how he killed both people or something like that. And I realized, well, that's dumb. Why would they come back a second time just to be told that that's a dumb idea? So I had to change that up somehow and then come up with, I think the story that Evan tells them, like, hey, why don't you try this story on for size, was actually one of their theories from a previous draft or something like that. It got really convoluted because as it goes, I don't do well with magic tricks. I love magic tricks and I like card tricks and showing them and all that. I have a hard time with selling them. Because I know what the joke is. I know where the card is and I know all the things. And so it's hard for me to tell it like my mom's brother is a magician. Like that's what he does, for fun and for a living. And he can sell it. And, it's lovely to watch and all of those things, but I have a hard time just personally. It's not like a ethical thing. I'm just bad at it. So I know a couple of things. I know that the officers are at the door, and so it's hard for me to imagine, well, how do I get them to react in case it's not the officers at the door? But I know that it's the officers. So what if it was Lauren Bacall at the door? What would, but I also know the ending of the story. And so it's then hard for me to craft lies around it. And I think what's interesting, storytelling, though, again, I'm not good at it, but I find interesting storytelling is when you have a collection of facts and then are able to draw different conclusions from the same box of facts. I used to do an event at my church that we called guerrilla cinema, like guerrilla warfare, where we would give video teams the same raw materials. So here's the premise of your short film, so to speak, like two guys walk in a bar, right? And with that, you'd come up with wildly different end results. I just kind of enjoy that. It kind of annoys me when two people get the same box of facts and end up with the same result in a movie or a story kind of like this. I think I've talked before about, had a problem with the first Jurassic Park slightly, in that whoever the male scientist person is, he has theories about how dinosaurs move based on bones, which I think is just an amazing amount of inference that you have to make from a fossilized bone. I know how they moved on the earth. To then you watch them in Jurassic Park and they do exactly what he predicted. He was a perfect guess at that. It would have been more interesting for him to have had a guess, watch them behave, and then go, oh, I see where I was off. He still had all the right tools, but he didn't have this one thing that made it all make sense. Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out, how do I look at the same box of facts and come up with a variety of conclusions? So if you are in the middle of either writing or reading a mystery, that is a thing to keep in mind. That's really what's going on, is the writer is showing you all the facts and drawing you to a variety of conclusions that could be made from those facts, and leading you down dead ends and red herrings and all that kind of stuff, which is, I think, is the fun of participating in a mystery, is all that kind of stuff. And as I mentioned in the last several episodes, this is one chapter in a long string of what happened in the apartment of Evan Gold on whatever night this was. So the chapter before ended with a knock at the door, and this one ends with a scream happening inside the apartment. So what on earth is going to transpire now with this new cliffhanger to get you to hopefully tune in next week and listen to the next chapter. So that's where I'm going to leave it, though, with that level of bad ending. I would encourage you, if you haven't done this yet, to swing over to wherever you're listening to this and leave the show a rating and review. That puts the show out in front of other people. Also, you can go to Amazon.com and leave a rating and review for any of the books that you have read, including Shell Game. Even if you have not finished Shell Game, but have purchased a copy, I think you can go over there and leave a rating and review over there. Also, I've been talking about these planners that I have out, and they are getting closer and closer to being all the way finished. I think I now have 4 of them ready to go. So if you are into quarterly planning, which again is a way that I have been able to finish the books that I have written, I have 4 different designs for a quarterly, not journal, planner, so that you could plan your quarter, and you could have one per quarter, and that way you would have a way to know which one is quarter one and so on, or you could just find the design you like and just stick with that. It's up to you. But if you like getting things done and setting goals and watching those things happen, planning is often the way that happens. So whether you're writing a novel or you're just trying to figure out what you're going to do at work or at home to get some major things done, check out those journals over there at Amazon. You can also let people know about the writers group over at brianthomascrop.com. For the mere exchange of an email address, I will give you a whole slew of stories, and then you'll be able to stay up to date with all the things going on in the world of this show and these books and such. So I think that's all the shameless plugs I have. It's a lot. I do announcements at church too, and it's just a lot of things, and you get lost in the details. So anyway, I will stop there. Hope you have a great week, and I will see you back here next time.